Peppa, Zoe, and Candy stayed overnight at school. Flashlights stood on the desks. The children laughed, playing hide and seek. The lights began to flicker. Chalk writings distorted, letters twisted, crawling by themselves across the board. The laughter faded. Strange voices softly whispered their names. Red eyes flickered on the walls, watching every movement. Peppa felt an icy chill, her heart racing. Suddenly, a silhouette darted behind her. Red eyes stared straight at her. Peppa, Zoe, and Candy rushed into the hallway. The doors slammed shut on their own. The lamps flickered. Shadows from the ceiling and walls slid down, stretching into tentacles. They moved toward the children, intertwining and writhing. The children ran, the echo of their footsteps blending with a faint metallic hum. A silhouette flashed ahead, its eyes glowing red. For a moment, it seemed they had managed to escape it. The children hid behind the tables. The dishes trembled, the space itself seemed to breathe. For a brief moment, they calmed down, catching their breath, thinking the danger had passed. But from the corners, the shadows suddenly came alive, wrapping around Zoe and Candy, seeping into their limbs. Their eyes flared red, their movements turned sharp and unnatural. Peppa screamed as shadows reached for her from every corner. Peppa ran into the assembly hall. The stage was lit by a dim spotlight. Suddenly, the ghost of Madame Gazelle appeared, red eyes, a stretched grin. Zoe and Candy, with monstrous faces and tentacles, moved independently between the rows of chairs, driving Peppa toward the stage. The shadows merged into a dome around Peppa, coiling around her body. She tried to break free, then looked up. Only strange faces stared from the ceiling. The light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Grandpa came back from fishing with no catch. He was dragging an old chest covered in shells. Black, salty slime oozed from its cracks. The chest whispered softly, melodically, like a seashell. Evie smiled and reached for it. Slime dripped onto the sand, forming uneven letters. They vanished as though washed away by an invisible tide. Grandpa sat at the edge. His fingers had turned blue, sharp black shells growing beneath his nails. He scraped them across the chest's lid. The water around the pier stilled. A fisherman rose from the water. His eyes were milky white. He grabbed Peppa's hand. His skin was rough, as if covered with nets. "It calls its own home." "Into the depths," he whispered. Behind him, the water swelled. Something in it was breathing. That night, Peppa heard a low hum, as if the sea were flowing right into the walls. Thin black tentacles stretched through the window. They slid across the glass, leaving marks. The chest stood below, on the living room floor. Its whisper broke with glitches, as though the voice came from an old radio. By morning, the boat rocked by the pier. Grandpa knelt before the chest. It was open. Black water lashed from within. It did not spill over, but rose upward. Inside sat Evie. Slippery tentacles coiled around her legs. Her skin shimmered with scales. Her eyes were black with red sparks. Evie silently beckoned Peppa. The world lurched. Peppa found herself in a void with no bottom. Black tentacles held her wrist. Around her floated enormous silhouettes like sea creatures. The chest with Evie hung in the darkness, its lids breathing. The whisper had become a low rumble, which turned into a sharp metallic screech.
"More is needed. A full collection is required."
The fair buzzed with lights and voices. Colorful stalls beckoned with sweets. Peppa pulled Grandpa by the hand toward the brightest stand. The shelves were bursting with Labubu figurines. They all smiled with identical mouths. One golden figurine stood apart. Its crimson eyes followed Peppa's every move, then slowly winked at her. Behind the stall, an emaciated seller looked as pale as paper, their smile frozen too wide with too many teeth. Peppa begged Grandpa to win her a golden figurine. He nodded and moved smoothly. He threw a ball into an arcade machine. The ball hit its target. The figurine dropped into a tray. Grandpa picked it up. His eyes glazed over, and he reached into his pocket, pulling out not just one, but dozens of identical golden labubus that spilled onto the carpet. He whispered endless repetitions.
More is needed. A full collection is required.
Outside, people with prizes froze in place, their faces fixed with empty smiles. Peppa ran into darkness. The alley behind the fair was silent and dark. A flickering street lamp illuminated an ominous figure, that same seller. But now his body consisted of hundreds of fused figurines. They moved and creaked teeth. Clicking nearby stood Grandpa, whose skin had turned gray and hard, the smile frozen forever. He stared blankly through glassy eyes at emptiness. The seller extended his hand, holding one figurine, a face resembling Peppa's with glowing crimson eyes, a mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. Peppa felt icy coldness at her fingertips. The skin on her palm became smooth and glossy. Hundreds of crimson-eyed monsters stared at her. The silence shattered with a sharp click. No subscribe. Nightmares arrive. An old television in the living room flickered with blue light. An advertisement was playing, a cheerful cartoon about Labubu at the cinema. The halls were filled with viewers, but now the theater had long been closed. At the end of the clip, Labubu on the screen stretched out its hand, pointed directly at Evie. A ticket crawled out of the TV speakers, printed on sticky black paper. It smelled of mold. Papa Pig took the ticket, his eyes dulled. He took Peppa and Evie to the cinema. The building was dark, windows boarded up, heavy curtains of cobwebs hung. Inside, it smelled of dust and old sugar. They entered. Shadows sat in the hall, silhouettes, former viewers. They were frozen in their seats forever. Their eyes glowed with a sickly green light. Instead of a cartoon, a distorted version of Peppa's life played on the screen. Her friends smiled too broadly, holding Labubu. Then they showed Peppa's parents. They looked with empty eyes. All served Labubu. Papa Pig leaned toward Peppa. His breath was cold. Soon you will also become part of our happy crew. Peppa jumped up and tried to run. But suddenly the chairs in the hall came to life. Their armrests twisted, turned into black tentacles. They wrapped around her arms and legs, pinning Peppa back to the chair. Evie was projected onto the screen, but her face was Labubu's face. She was laughing. Papa Pig donned a ticket-taker's uniform. His movements became sharp, mechanical. He tore the ticket. Black ink splattered onto the floor. The session had begun. No turning back. The screen went dark. The hall plunged into silence. A sound was heard, a tearing film reel, or vocal cords. The family enters a vast Victorian greenhouse. Dozens of pots with exotic plants surround them. In the center rises a wooden sculpture of Labubu holding a flower. A close-up of the wooden Labubu's face. In its bead-like eyes, the shadows of shifting plants are reflected. On the petals of a rare orchid, patterns emerge, resembling grinning Labubu faces. In the heart of the flower, among the stamens, tiny seeds glitter, shaped like miniature Labubus. The leaves on the walls form silhouettes that resemble the family members, but with disproportionately large heads. Drops of condensation slide down the glass ceiling. They merge into patterns that form smiles. The family steps into a closed pavilion. The air is sweet and heavy with the scent of orchids. At the center stands a vase filled with transparent nectar. Inside float tiny labubus, as if made from candied fruit. All the walls are covered with orchids, their petals resembling Labubu's enormous ears. On a gleaming drop of nectar appears the inverted reflection of the family, and each face bears Labubu's features. The roots of the plants intertwine, weaving a web. Faces